Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're taking a look at the changes to the Codex Aeldari. This video is sponsored by the Game Bunker. More on that later. Alright, so we got the brand new Codex Aeldari, we got the brand new points have dropped, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the changes to the army, how it's going to operate differently, what detachments I think are good, and then the points changes. So previously, the Aeldari army rule and then also the detachment rule are really what was crucial to Aeldari and made them so oppressive. The army rule essentially allowed you to roll a bunch of dice at the beginning of the game, potentially modify some of those dice, and then use them later on to manipulate your dice rolls by replacing them with those pre-rolled dice. And then couple that with the Aeldari detachment rule, which allowed you to reroll one hit roll and wound roll every time a unit activated. It meant that you were essentially using your fate dice to replace damage rolls of 6s to auto-do max damage with weapons, or replacing overwatch rolls with big weapons so that you automatically hit with the 6, or just overall increasing the damage output of your units by being able to reroll a hit and a wound every time. These rolls together were particularly good with single-shot weapons that did extremely high damage, essentially guaranteeing that your low-volume firepower with high damage was the most effective. So now these rolls are essentially gone, and we've got a bunch of brand new detachments, we have a new army rule, and the Aeldari operate completely differently. They have always been a glass cannon, and now they're much more of like a sort of hit-and-run army, being able to do some damage and then jump back in transports, move behind a wall, or go back up into deep strike. I don't think there's necessarily a consensus yet, but I think overall the Warhost is probably the best detachment. It leans in on your army roll, allowing you to do like a lot of the reactive moves and like extra moves, essentially increasing the mobility of the Aeldari, leaning in on what they're already good at. And now, after taking a look through the whole book, having a look at everything that has changed, I think realistically, the Phoenix Lords, and then in particular the Aspect Warriors they join, are going to be where your real damage dealing firepower comes from. But just like any army, there's a lot of ways that they can balance it, one with rules changes and two with points changes. So we have completely different rules now, but we also have completely different points from what was published in the Codex. So some of the particularly good units from the Codex I think are Assermen, joined to a unit of Dire Avengers, and then riding around in a Wave Serpent. 10 Dire Avengers can dish out over 40 shots. At close range they're going to get sustained hits. You have the ability to trigger a stratagem and get sustained hits on 5. Assermen is particularly good once per game against 3 wound models with a special ability that does dev wounds and anti-infantry. The Wave Serpents are extremely quick and can hold 12 models, so you're able to get them where they need to be, jump out, and then shoot. And then Assermen has an awesome special ability that means after him and his unit shoot, they can make a 6-inch move. And they can use this move to jump back inside of a transport. So while I do think this is an extremely good unit and will probably be finding its way in most Aeldari armies, we did see some points increases to Assermen and then also the Dire Avengers. So a unit of 10 Dire Avengers is coming in at 150 points, Assermen is 135 points, so you're at 285 points. And then the Wave Serpent got a 5-point deduction, but is coming in at 115 points. So you're talking about a 400-point unit that is definitely going to be very effective and the core of Eldar armies, but I do think that it's pointed appropriately. Next from there, we have the Warp Spiders. They lost their dev wounds, but you have 10 models, all armed with flamers. You have the ability to flicker jump, so they can move extremely quickly across the battlefield. Typically when they flicker jump, they're really fast, but they're not able to charge afterwards. But with the addition of the new Phoenix Lord Lycus, she grants them ability to charge after flicker jumping. So this unit won't need a transport. It's 190 points for the Warp Spiders. Lycus is 120 points. So you're talking about a 310 point unit. They're going to be able to move extremely fast, teleporting. They're going to be able to drop in and do about 40 flamer hits on average. And then you're going to have the ability to charge a unit afterwards. So extremely powerful unit. Definitely think this is going to be in most lists. But like all of the Aeldari, even though they have a decent armor save with toughness 3 and only 1 wound apiece, they are definitely a glass cannon. Next we have the Dark Reapers. Essentially each one of them is armed with a missile launcher. 10 of them is going to be coming in at 180 points. The Warhost detachment has a stratagem that will allow them to jump back inside a vehicle after they've shot. So once again, I think you ride them around with a Wave Serpent. And I think for maximum efficiency, Moggan Ra, their Phoenix Lord, is actually pretty good and I think finds their way into that squad. So 180 points for 10 Dark Reapers, 100 points for Moggan Ra, and then 115 points for a Wave Serpent is going to give you a 395 point unit that is extremely fast and mobile, can jump out, shoot 10 missile launcher shots plus Moggan Ra's devastating wounds cannon, potentially do additional mortal wounds, force a battle shock test, and then for 1 command point jump back into a transport. So once again, I think this is going to be an extremely effective unit, especially in Warhost, and likely finds its way into most lists. Next we have the Swooping Hawks. They're going to have Deep Strike and the ability to fly. 10 of them is going to come in at 170 points. And then Baharoth, their Phoenix Lord, is coming in at 115. So you've got 11 model unit for 285 points. They're going to be able to do mortal wounds to something within 8 inches, which normally wouldn't be useful coming out of deep strike, but because Baharas's ability is she can drop in with the squad outside of 6 instead of outside of 9, you can drop in from deep strike, do an average of 5 mortal wounds, shoot 40 shots with lethal hits, and then her weapon as well. And then at the end of your opponent's fight phase, if the unit is still alive, they're going to be able to go back into deep strike. So again, an extremely powerful unit with the ability to do a massive alpha strike, lots of up-down shenanigans with Baharat attached. Pretty reasonably priced at 285 points, but once again, an extremely fragile unit that could easily be obliterated if they're left out of position. The Fire Dragons and Fugen, probably one of the best units in the entire book. Once again, Fire Dragons, you're going to be able to take either 5 or 10 of them for 100 or 200 points. Fugen is 120 points. So you're talking about a 220 to 320 point unit. Again, you're going to need a transport for them. So another 115 points for a Wave Serpent. So even a 5-man unit with Fugen is going to be coming in at 220 points plus the transport. So 335 points. They're going to be extremely effective with the ability to flip the damage roll on Fugen's weapon to a 6. And with the Melta in half range, that means it's going to be doing a flat 12 damage. The Fire Dragons basically have Melta rifles with extended range thanks to Fugen. And again, if you're in Warhost, you'll be able to jump out, shoot with these guys, and then jump back inside of a transport. They should be able to pretty reliably take out a knight or basically anything in the game in a single shooting phase. But for a 435 point unit, even though Wave Serpents are fairly durable with a 3-up and then a 5-up invulnerable, if you put these guys out of place or your opponent swarms in on them, they're going to be easily able to take out that 400 point unit.
Now a quick word from today's sponsor, Game Bunker. Game Bunker carries a full range of Games Workshop products including miniatures, terrain, paint, tools, and more. Game Bunker offers 15% off MSRP for most Games Workshop products with the discount code WHMS. Receive free shipping in the continental United States on orders over $145. Online orders ship out within 24 hours. Game Bunker is a veteran-owned business. Use affiliate link below, enter discount code WHMS to save 15% on most items at checkout. For fast, friendly service with a discount on your favorite tabletop wargaming purchases, visit GameBunker.net and let them know that Warhammer Man sent you.
Next, we have our Howling Banshees. The Howling Banshees are 180 points for 10 or 90 for 5. Janezar is their Phoenix Lord for 105 points. And I think more often than not, you're going to see this unit taken in 5s with Janezar attached. They're only 2 attacks apiece and 1 wound, but with 5 models and Janezar, the ability to advance and charge, fights first for defending objectives. I think realistically, a smaller unit of them for about 195 points, tucked into some cover out of sight, is going to be a pretty nice and effective countercharge unit. Next, we have the Striking Scorpions. Unfortunately, there's no Karandras, so they're not going to have access to their Phoenix Lord in the new book. But at 75 points, they're pretty quick. They have a nice volume of attacks. They're not going to be great damage dealers, but they're ideal for like tying up units, getting somewhere where they need to be with their infiltrate ability, doing actions, etc. And then we also have Eldred Ulthrin. He is like the main psyker of the faction. He can only be attached to Guardians, but his main 2 abilities are phenomenal. He's going to give you an extra command point every battle round. And then he can also point at a unit he can see within 18 inches and give your army +1 to wound. Because he can only be attached to Guardians, this unit is going to be extremely fragile, and because his ability to give the +1 to wound means he needs to have line of sight, it means you're going to have to position them so that they move out, see a unit, the rest of your army kills it, but then they're not fully exposed to your opponent's shootbacks, because with 1 wound apiece, even in cover, these guys are going to die pretty easy. Eldred Ulthrin is 110 points, a unit of Guardians is another 100 points, so that's a 210 point CP farm with the ability to jump out and then grant +1 to wound for your army against a certain unit, making sure that you take out a key target, but again, extremely fragile. So there are tons of other really good units in this book. The Avatar of Cain is extremely powerful and gives some of the durability that the rest of your army lacks. Some of the flyers are pretty cool and definitely have some nice abilities. I think the platforms, especially the D-Cannon, are appropriately priced. And even though now you can join them into a Guardian unit, the indirect fire rules aren't nearly as oppressive, and you're no longer able to just flip a dice roll to a 6 or get those free rerolls from the Detachment ability, so they're going to be far less effective. Things like Rangers are still going to be really good with their reactive move, coming in at only 55 points. Great units to put out ahead and make your opponent come out for an inopportune trade. You also have a lot of really cool Harlequin units that could definitely find their way in. I think more often than not, you're going to see the Solitaire, as he's essentially an Eldar assassin and can basically run across the battlefield and kill just about any Space Marine character with precision and his tons of attacks, taking away some of the synergy that your opponent's army is counting on. You also have a lot of other cool units like some cheap vehicles such as Vipers and Warwalkers, allowing you to stack some buffs against key units. You've got some big shooty tanks like the Fire Prisms, the Falcons, and the Night Spinners, but to tell you the truth, they're all pretty appropriately costed, especially the indirect fire from the Night Spinner. and I don't think they're going to be nearly as oppressive as they've been in the past because a lot of the stratagems and reactive moves are prohibited to infantry only. You've also got big things like the Wraith Knights, which again I think are pretty well balanced, Wraith Lords as well. We also saw massive changes to the other Wraith construct units that are no longer available in units of 10, which means they're going to be far less oppressive. And I think overall my final takeaway about the Aeldari is that even though on paper they look extremely good and they're going to be able to dish out a ton of alpha strike damage, a lot of their units are going to feel uninteractable, especially if your army's not quick. They lack the durability of a lot of other armies. If you make one mistake, you could easily lose a 400-point unit that's crucial to your battle plan. And I think more so than anything, there's pretty nice internal balance inside this codex because you are spoiled for choice with a bunch of awesome units that do a ton of damage. But because most of those units are coming in at like 300 or 400 points, it means you're only going to have a handful of them, and you're going to have to leave some of those hard hitters home to make room for cheap units like your Rangers or your Striking Scorpions, some of your support units like your Vipers or your Warwalkers. So overall, I am definitely looking forward to Aeldari. I don't think they're as broken as people are trying to act like they are. I think it's going to take some time for people to get good with them. I think it's also going to take some time for people to get good against them. And overall, I'm really looking forward to the meta and the shakeup and putting some Aeldari back on the table. So let me know what you think of the new codex. If you have any particular lists or detachments in mind, what do you think of the overall points costs and balance inside the codex? Always like to hear back from you guys in the comments. That is it for our basic breakdown for the new codex Aeldari and points changes. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, thanks to the Game Bunker for sponsoring the channel. Check out the link in the description to save 15% on most Games Workshop products with code WHMS at checkout. That's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man, and I'm out of here.